Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. As all of my intros go, I got a good friend of mine with us, Camden, James Proby. Might as well, maybe I ought to record that and just make that part of the show. Cam and Otis show got a good friend with us because I say that every week. But yeah,
Save us
James
that 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. Right. James Proby, a great man, a great leader in the Colorado Springs community and beyond. And we're going to get into a bit of that. And also the founder of the Men's Exchange, which if those of you who have paid attention to our YouTube channel, you'll see that Camden and I are dressed for the part today, dressed to impress in the Men's Exchange attire. And I'm going to let James talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, so that's why Cam and I look so dapper today. James, man, appreciate you taking some time out this morning to join us.
Dude, thank you guys so much for having me. And I look forward to, as always, diving into any conversations with you, man.
Yeah, and we've had some great ones. Yeah, we have. And let's start off with the Men's Exchange, because I know you've been a businessman your entire life and grew up in a business family. Where did the Men's Exchange come from? What was that catalyst?
Well, I spent probably 15 years of my life working in employment and in education. And part of the employment pieces, including being a recruiter and director of career services for some for-profit colleges. I got a chance to do that locally, regionally, and nationally. And I also sat on the board of directors for the Women's Resource Agency, which is a nonprofit in Colorado Springs that helped women get dressed professionally at no cost. It became apparent to me as we were helping hundreds and thousands of individuals get dressed or find employment, that for those individuals who didn't have the means to get dressed, there were resources in every city in America to help women get dressed at little or no cost for a business environment. Those resources did not exist for men. And we were trying to figure out how we could help men get dressed professionally at a moderate cost or at no cost. And that really is the idea that started with the Men's Exchange. There are a couple things that came about. I am a native of Colorado Springs. I love my hometown. I've traveled through most parts of the country and several places in the world. And I always choose to come back to live in Colorado Springs. This is the place that I pick, right? One of the things I don't like about my hometown is the way that men dress. It is a freaking nightmare out here.
It's Colorado. It's okay. That's what everybody
it is not okay. It is not okay.
I'll take it you're not big on the jeans and flip-flops then?
Well, the jeans and flip-flop things are not nearly as crazy for me as, showing up to dinner, wearing a hat and camo and, sitting down fine dining and assuming that's okay and not even have the basic courtesy or the mindset to take a hat off. There are some things that we've just kind of lost our way on, and it drives me a little bit batty. And I tried to figure out how could we address all of these issues at the same time. So we created something that is a social enterprise. And for those of you not familiar with social enterprise or social impact businesses, it's a business that is set out to make money. It has one foot firmly rooted in capitalism and capitalistic principles. It has one foot firmly rooted in the nonprofit sector. So we generate money very specifically to go out and make money, but we use that money to do good things and to solve some form of a social ill in our community. So our business model is we have nothing but men's business and dress apparel, suits, sport jackets, dress shirts, ties, slacks. Everything in our shop is donated to us. We send everything out to dry cleaning. Once it's been cleaned and laundered, it comes back into our shop. Anyone in the whole wide world can shop there. Everything is $40 or less every day. So that means a full suit is $40 with us. A sport jacket is $30. Dress shirts are $10, slacks are $10. We do full sizings and fittings with everyone. So we do all of your measurements. We give you your entire list of measurements and we hand those back to you. We go through a fit session with everybody. So we will talk with you about the way suits are supposed to fit in your chest, shoulders, and sleeve length, the way that pants are supposed to fit in your waist, seat, and at the pant length. And for every 9 or so people that shop with us, we get to dress one person in our community at no cost. And those individuals are referred to us through Mount Carmel Center of Veterans, the Pikes Peak Workforce Center, Reach Pikes Peak, the Springs Rescue Mission, which is our homeless shelter. We add 1 to 4 new nonprofits every single quarter so that we can help manage that growth and expand our reach so that we can eliminate clothing being a barrier for individuals to move forward to the next phase in their lives.
Now, you hit on several things that are just one of my favorite things. And the biggest one is the social enterprise, because, you know, people get wrapped around the axle about success and business and profit. But what they don't understand, and I'm not going to generalize, what some people don't understand is that you got to make profit to keep the business going. And then what you do with that profit is what makes it a social enterprise. And that's what's so awesome about it is you've got a business, capitalistic business, making a profit, which is awesome. And you're giving back to the community. So not only are you helping people with, I mean, great sport coat here. This is one of my favorite ones, by the way. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you, I don't remember if I told you this or not, but Ryan Harris, Super Bowl champion, radio personality up in Denver.
Yeah.
He saw me wearing this suit, this sport coat a year or so ago. And he's like, we're walking by. He's like, that's a damn good looking sport coat. You know? So,
nice.
you know, and I got to shake his big, massive mitt of a hand with a giant Super Bowl ring on it. Because I was wearing your sport coat, man. So,
I love that, dude.
Yeah. I don't think I hadn't told too many people that story. So, but yeah, going back to that ability to help the community in so many ways. It's not just the standard, you know, I'm hiring people or whatever. You're doing multiple lines of support, if you will. And I think that's one of the things that passion for your hometown and your community, our community, not just yours, our community, to help grow it and make us all look pretty darn going good is awesome. And I want to thank you for doing that, because I appreciate it.
Man, I greatly appreciate that as well. And, you know, our goal is to try and figure out, you'll see on our business cards in a lot of places, it's how can I be a better man? And our goal is not to create perfection with anybody. It's how can we be better? And one giant piece of that is how do we show up for our significant others? And I'm very purposeful when I use the term significant others. It is not just my relationship partner, but it is also my children, it is my siblings, it's my parents, it's the person that is my lover or my chosen relationship partner, it is my community. How am I presenting myself in those spaces, right? So how do I show up? How do I present? And am I putting forth my best effort and showing the best of me, or am I showing the rest of me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about what I would call the look good, feel good principle, as far as that effect, whether it's sports or business or anything like that. When you dress the part, you feel it, and you feel that energy. It's just a completely different ballgame.
Absolutely. So there's another big piece in there. One of the things that we're blessed to do every day is to see the transformation that happens with men. And there is a nonverbal space where we get a chance to put men in sport jackets, in shirts, in ties for the first time in their lives, and watch them step in front of a mirror and watch the spark happen in their eyes. Watch that instantaneous response of, oh my, is that me? Is that what I look like when I'm dressed like this? And then there's the secondary piece of when men are wearing their clothing and they go out and they're in public, they're in society, they're throughout our community. And the way that they get treated differently because of the way they're presenting themselves. Mm-hmm. They will note the fact that people will call them sir, or they get better service, or people hold the doors for them. And there's a different nonverbal space that happens in there when I show up in a sport jacket versus when I show up in a hoodie, right? So there's a time and space for everything. You should have hooded sweatshirts, right? But it's a hooded sweatshirt, and it's meant for a reason. There are other times when you absolutely should never show up in that, because you should be in a sport jacket or a dress shirt and present yourself in a different way. Mm-hmm. And Cam, you're absolutely right, man. There's a space where individuals feel differently when they're in that space. And it's not just acting the part, it is actually looking the part, feeling the part, and presenting yourself in a different way.
Mhm. Yeah, I
You
think I
know,
can personally. I was actually going to send it over to you with a question, but I can personally attest to, especially working at home, being self-employed, that it's like, oh my gosh, if I get dressed, I shower, and I get my hair combed, get my nice shirt on, but even if, especially if I put the jacket on, it's like, oh, I'm getting work done today because I'm a CEO. Look at me, I'm
Right,
a CEO. I'm not
right,
lounging around in shorts with no shirt on because I'm at home working from home. I'm a CEO, and I'm taking that position. But
right.
Dad, what I wanted to send over to you is because that's something that you told me years ago before I was introduced to James was just that you want to be overdressed rather than underdressed. And I know you have some business stories where you can define that out in a great way, Dad. So I wanted to send it over to you for those. Make sure you didn't forget.
yeah. Well, it was shortly after I'd gotten out of the Army. I started working for Lockheed Martin, and I'd only been there maybe a month, and was back east at the headquarters doing some work, and was supposed to go to an employee orientation. And I was wearing a suit, unlike hardly anybody there, because my dad worked for Lockheed for 30 years, and he wore a suit every day. And so I'm wearing a suit, and I walk into this class late, about an hour after it starts, and the instructor kind of stood up a little bit straighter. Everybody else that was in the class sat up straighter in their chairs, and I plopped down in the back and started taking notes and things. And man, that first break, the instructor beelined over to me because he thought I was from headquarters auditing his class because
Right.
I was wearing a suit. So I mean, that was just maybe 2 months after taking the uniform off. I learned that lesson of if you look good, you feel good, and there's so much to that. And I'll build on that, James, because I'm a bit of a Tony Robbins fan, and one of the things Tony does is he talks about make your move, and making your move to put yourself in the right mindset for what you're about to do. And everybody has a physical move or whatever that you can do, but you know what? Dressing the part is a big piece of that, and that's well, really what I want to do. I want to flip that back around to a question: is where did you learn that? Where did that root from?
Well, so my dad pastored the same church for 47 years. And his father pastored the church, right?
Wow.
So as we dive into a couple of pieces in there, obviously there's a religious piece that flows through there, but there's a social piece that we don't tend to talk about in this nation. We probably should a lot more often. I have this lineage of pastors of the Black Baptist Church in their communities, because there's a spiritual piece to it, because there's a godly calling to it, but also because from a society standpoint, for the better part of 300 years in this country, that was the highest position a Black man could hold.
Mm-hmm.
You could not be an elected senator, you couldn't be the mayor, you couldn't be the president, but the highest position you could hold was to lead your community as the pastor of the Black Baptist Church. And in doing so, you needed to present yourself in a very specific way, right? So that is not just a Black Baptist piece. For the vast majority of the time that we had churches, and we've had churches in this country, you dressed a very specific way when you showed up to church. Hence, we have statements of your Sunday best, right?
Mm-hmm. That's how I grew up too. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I grew up in a space where, putting on a suit and tie was not a foreign concept to me. I did it from the crib till now. But I got to an age like everyone else where you have an opportunity to start changing the way that you dress and changing the way that you present yourself. And in junior high school, middle school, I was going to middle school and scared to death like everybody else on the planet, absolutely petrified, trying to figure out how I could fit in the best possible ways, right? Like everyone does. And I went to junior high school, middle school in the early to mid 80s. And the look was to wear a pair of jeans and a baseball shirt, right? That was the most nondescript look you could get into. There were two types of jeans that were made at that time. There were Levi's 501s. Levi's made one cut. They made a 501, and that was it, unlike the 15 cuts they make now. And then there was Wranglers. And Wranglers have a certain social connotation that go along with them. I am not a Wrangler guy, right?
As we both look down, Dad.
Yeah, I mean, at least you can't see my britches right now. So
right. So I was not a Wrangler guy, but 501s did not fit on my body. So I showed up at the store trying to buy clothes to go back to school that summer, and it just wasn't happening. And I walked into a men's clothing store. I found they were closing out some of their spring line. I bought 3 pairs of dress slacks for $10 a piece. I bought 2 polo shirts for $10 a piece. I showed up to school my very first day of junior high school wearing dress slacks, a pair of loafers, and a polo shirt. And I walked into my first class scared to death, first period. And some girl I've never met in my entire life says to me, "Who are you? You don't dress like the other boys here." I say, "Hi, I'm James." We sit down and talk for a moment, and I'm as happy as I can be. I moved to second period class, totally different girl that I've never met before in my life says to me, "Who are you? You don't dress like the other boys in this school." I tell her who I am, and now this is ingrained for life. I'm done. Like, this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. If it means my entry point to having conversations with women my age is the fact that I'm dressed like a human being, I'm all on it. So that's when it really started for me. And it became, at that point, it no longer just became a family value, it became a conscientious choice.
Yeah, that's a powerful place. And it's funny that, a young man at that point in the middle school age, a young lady talking to you, that's that's an incentive right there, isn't it?
That's better than gold, I'm trying to tell you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Cam.
Oh, I was just going to say, when we're talking about incentives all the time, it's like that's a pretty big mechanism we can all dive in on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would hasten to say I would really suggest, and I've said in some sociology classes and presentations in the past that, I can make the argument that 100% of the things that heterosexual men do is driven back to the fact of impressing women. We get money so that we can have bigger houses, bigger cars, dress better, go on vacations. 9.9 times out of 10, that is so that we can attract a spouse or a significant other, or be attractive to individuals that we want to be attracted to, right? So if that ends up being the case, then that means we work for money to impress women. We do the jobs that we do so that we can impress women. I can drive that. I can have that conversation all day long and connect the dots on that. But you want to talk about powerful incentive. It made a huge impact on me at a very early age.
Oh yeah, the evolutionary biology, like behavioral science side of that is just so interesting. But I kind of wanted to, speaking of incentives, we get into the economics a little bit. I always like to steer things that way some. And one of the things that I realized what you're talking about what you do with Men's Xchange and how your business operates, is that you're doing a really good job of addressing what I've learned to call a poverty trap. In the sense of, there's this nice curve that we all like to think perfect economics. We can all just grow up, be rich because, it's economics. We can all grow our wealth, right? There's all this wealth growth. And what you wind up with in reality is all of these weird little areas that people get stuck for whatever reason. And one of the little tiny ones that I think it's in a big way, like so simple to address, is what you're talking about with Men's Xchange, is just the inability to dress for the job that you want, the inability to be able to dress up nice, feel good about yourself. And then, because when you feel good about yourself, we've been talking about this, how's that for a social multiplier? Of you feel good about yourself, you're smiling, you smile at someone, they start smiling, all this starts to build just because you're dressing up nicer. Not only are you breaking out of that poverty trap and moving along, but you're affecting everyone else in the community that way. So I just wanted to applaud you for that, because I think it's such an interesting thing, because that's one of the best and most effective solutions you can find, are things that can fix holes in the curve rather than trying to redraw the whole thing. And you've done a great job with that, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. I think it also speaks to culture and how you can change culture, right? And one of the things that I'm really big on in changing culture is not necessarily coming in with a billy club and telling everybody this is the way you're going to be, right? But in most of the jobs that I've had, I've been a change style management person. It's been my job to go in and change the culture of the organization, or at least the team that I've been on. And one of the things that we do that is through how we dress and present ourselves. So it's not like I ever had to walk into a place and say, we're going to be dressing more professionally here, so get used to it. Never a mandate, right? But when the leader of your group, your team, or the new person that's heading your division shows up in a jacket and a tie on a daily basis, it changes what you perceive you need to do. And then slowly but surely, the individuals around your office that are around you start to change their vibration to make sure it connects at the right levels, right? That happens in a ton of spaces. Otis and Cam, you've been to, but Otis comes to 1 Million Cups, which is it happens throughout several different communities around the country. I was blessed to have been a community organizer for that organization for a couple of years, right? In that space, I show up the way that I show up every single day. We had an opportunity to grow that community from a consistent base of about 25, 30 people to a consistent base of 100 to 25 people every week, right? Mm-hmm. In that, the way that we dress, and the men that were involved in that started dressing in a different way. And it meant that the men that showed up every single week started presenting themselves in a different way. And it turns into this big trickle down effect where every single person starts to realize, oh, if I'm going to show up in this space, I need to present this. I need to show up presenting in this way. I need to show myself in this way, or else I don't fit in. I'm not going to connect. I'm not going to get the business I want. I need to be on brand. That is one minor way that you get to do that. But what you're talking about, Cam, is the output and the throughput that gets to happen with that. It does mean very much so that we as a community look more professional. We as a community look more caring. We as a community have a higher level of visualized integrity. And that's super cool.
Yeah, and I'd say to have a little bit of fun and extrapolate a little bit more as the effects continue to roll out, then you're an entrepreneur from another part of the country and you want to come out to Colorado Springs, look around a little bit, and you see everyone dressed up nice. Ooh, this is a nice place to do business. I want to work downtown here. And the effect just keeps on building and building.
So Cam, you're absolutely right. And another space of that is the fact that Otis brought up earlier, oh, you know, it's Colorado, you can dress this way, or maybe that was you that pointed out, oh, it's Colorado, you can dress this way. There are regional parts of the country, right? I just got through helping a young man who's getting dressed, and he's about to move out of town, and he's about to do business in the South. And I pointed out to him, you know, when you are in the South in traditional business, there's a completely different vibe that's there. And you got to dress in a completely different way. And I understand it's hotter with more humidity, totally get that. But if you show up without being properly dressed for business in a business environment, you are defining yourself as a trashy human being. You are downplaying yourself and your family as non-learned and non-engaged human beings. It speaks volumes about who you are. There are cities throughout all of America where that ends up being the case, and it's not just the South. You can't show up in New York and San Francisco, in Dallas and Miami looking any kind of way that you want to do business. There is a kind of a minimum requirement to be able to show up in those spaces. Mm-hmm. And I'm not suggesting every community has to be the same or we have to be copycats or mirrors of anything, but there certainly should be some cultural values that allow you to have some different cultural feels in each space. But there should also be some minimums that we will accept from anybody.
Mm-hmm. I think the interesting aspect of that too, as you're talking about different areas and the cultures around the way people dress there, is I've been to places in the country where you wear your cowboy suit, what I got on right now, and it's like, that doesn't look quite right. But when I came to you and I said, hey, I'm going down to Arizona to sell vegetables, you said, oh, I can do that. And it's all about the angle and the culture that you're trying to go for, right?
Right. And does it represent the brand that you're trying to present? And does it represent you as your own personal brand? Is that how I want it? Do I want to represent myself and my family as the dude who shows up in the wrinkled T-shirt with stains on it? Is that the best I can present myself as?
You know, it's funny about that, how the techie startup world is kind of created this image of, you know, T-shirt and shorts, it should be acceptable in a business environment. Yeah, no, I just flat out.
What's really funny about that is, oh my goodness, I just forgot. I just lost that movie. Baseball film.
Moneyball?
No, that's an amazing movie though.
Yeah, it is.
Kevin Costner from the 80s with Susan Sarandon.
Oh, Major League, is that the one? No. Yes, I know which one you're talking about, and Tom Berenger's in it too, right?
Yeah, well, no, he's in Major League.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
There's one of the points where Kevin Costner is talking to Tim Robbins' character, Nuke LaLoosh, And he says to him, you know, clean up your flip-flops and cut your toenails. And he says, you know, when you become a 20-game winner in the major leagues, that's character. It looks like you have a great deal of character. Right now, you're a slob. So until you get to that level of success, clean yourself up and present yourself in a better way, right? It's ultimately the conversation that's in there. When you happen to be the head of a scaling tech firm that's already gone public and you've already made, you know, $6 million in your first day, sure, dress any way you want to. Show up any way you feel like it, right? Jeff Bezos made $13 billion yesterday. He can show up any way he wants to. But if you're trying to get to that space, you've got to show some form that you belong in that position.
I like that. I think we can all get behind that rule, definitely, at least the three of us. You know, got to dress forward until you reach that point. Then the T-shirt we can talk about and we can go there, but you got to dress up until you get that job, get that success.
Yes.
I want to shift back around to some leadership thoughts there, James. But you know, with your grandfather and father leading the church for, you said 47 years is how long your dad was the pastor?
My dad pastored the same church for 47 years.
That's just, yeah. So 50 years of in a leadership position of a congregation that is growing and shrinking, you know, every week. So my first question in the leadership thing is, what's a one nugget, or you can say a couple, that you take from all those years of your dad's leadership that you've learned and you apply now?
So I want to also point out that beyond pastoring the same church, my father was the state's leading authority on civil rights through the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? That's the 40-year span that we're talking about there. So he was the first chair of the Civil Rights Commission for the state of Colorado. He was the first chair of the Human Rights Commission for the state of Colorado. He was the first cabinet member for any governor on civil rights, and he held that position for 4 different governors over the course of 40 years. So it goes well beyond reaching just the religious platform that's in there, and it talks about a societal platform and a political platform as well. I had the advantage of being able to grow up in that environment and to be able to see that and to be able to experience that from a different point of view. I think one of the things that is most important in there, and there's 2 things that you're talking about: leadership. And I think that there's some dangerous spaces when we start talking about leaders. We have individuals who desperately want to be leaders and shouldn't be, right? They like the title of it rather than the work that's involved with it. Like the idea of it rather than the actual practicality of the engagement that's involved with it, right?
They want the power of it.
I want the power that goes along with that.
Yeah.
I think the thing that becomes most important is that being part of a community, being part of a society is not living in that society. It does not mean showing up and driving into my cul-de-sac, pulling my car into my garage and not being engaged at all. It means you live there. It doesn't mean that you're part of the society. So I think one of the best things that you can do is to engage, to give your talents, your skills with every amount of passion and energy that you can. The Creator created all of us in the most perfect image of ourselves, right? And we all come to the table with different advantages and disadvantages. The thing is, when we can show up and bring the skill sets that we bring to the table with a great deal of passion, with a great deal of genuineness, then we are presenting into society, we're adding into society and community in the best possible ways. And then I think leadership grows from that. I think you find the spaces and the times when you are supposed to lead and other times when you are supposed to support. And I'm not necessarily thinking about following, because I'm not a huge fan on blind followership. I am a big fan of, how do I get into the spaces I'm supposed to be in? How do I lead in those spaces? And how do I support in those spaces when I'm not leading? And what am I supposed to learn and glean out of each one of these so that I can be the best version of myself when my opportunity presents itself?
Yeah, that's awesome, because what you're talking about is the perfect example of, it's not the name tag, it's not the placard on your desk, it's what you do, it's the actions you do. because that's my next question for you. Because if you look at the James resume or the James accomplishments, you see business, business, business. But then over here, you see all these things that he's structured and really nailed and led in the community. Because, I mean, you are, well, I mean, pardon me, because I feel like we're doing the James is an awesome guy, but he is. James is an awesome guy hour. But you know what? You are a leader in our community. And that's one of the reasons I mean, who doesn't know James Proby? I mean, really, and when you walk around Colorado Springs, you see a dude in a sport coat, there's probably an 80% chance that he got it at the men's exchange. I would say at least 80%, you know. So that what you're talking about, you know, those nuggets, and seeing that your father demonstrated it, because he could have easily spent his entire life focused on his congregation, just the folks that showed up to his church. But what he did was he shared that, and he just continued to share that. And that's what I'm seeing from you, is that trait. And you know, whether that's a Freakonomics thing or genetics or whatever, I mean, you have that trait. It's like, man, I'm leading over here. Here's my congregation, you know, the Men's Exchange Tribe. We need to get some T-shirts for that. But then we couldn't wear them. Crap, I don't know what we'll do. But, you know, the Men's Exchange Tribe, but then you're doing these other things over here. And where is that passion coming from? You know, is it I see a problem, I want to fix it? Is it what is it?
It is there's a rap group from Atlanta called Outkast, and one of their songs is "Get up, get out, and do something. Don't let the days of your life pass you by." Right? I'm a firm believer that you can sit on the sidelines and bitch and complain about anything. What are you doing to get up and change things, right? What are you doing to actually put your skin in the game, your effort, your time, your energy, your money to make life better? One of the things that I find ridiculously challenging are talk show hosts that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years and complain without presenting a viable, there's not a viable solution. No matter what happens, I'm going to Monday morning quarterback somebody else's efforts. And the other option to that is get your ass in the game and go do something, right? It's easy to sit down and process film on how Tom Brady missed the slot back while a 300-pound man was trying to take his head off, right? It's easy to do that when I'm sitting on, and I got Glenn Clicker. But when I'm in the heat of the moment, I don't have full vision. I'm wearing a helmet. I got a slight amount of view that I can look at, and I'm looking at 3 different hot reads, right? It's a different feeling when you're in that cockpit, when you're in that moment. And before you can start to criticize somebody else's efforts in those spaces, did you get in to give your best effort, right? So part of that is having a willingness to fail, having a willingness to step in, try, give your best effort, know that you did so, hopefully succeed, and if you don't, fail forward. Figure out how you failed and fail forward. You know, Nelson Mandela said, you know, I don't win or lose. I either win or I learn, right? So the idea is, how can we figure out the evolution of character and the evolution of leadership, which means learning from each one of those failures and continuing not to make that same mistake. When I'm mentoring young kids and young men, I tell them on a regular basis, I have no problem with you making a mistake. There's a whole world of mistakes out there for you to make. I got a problem with you making the same 1, 2, and 3 times. That's when we run into an issue. And it's not just with them, it's with me. I do the same thing as well. Like, I can tell you where my blind spots are going to be, where I'm more prone to make a mistake. I'm pretty clear to know where those items are, right? But it also means I got to pay a little more attention to it. So for me, the idea is, how can I be a contributor to community and to society? How can I give the best that I have to give into those spaces? And how can I do so with the best possible of intentions? And the best possible intentions, to me, this is a very subjective view of the universe, is how do we come up with a we first mentality instead of a me first mentality, right? I'm a firm believer that one of the things I've done in hiring individuals and teams and units is I'm a pretty strong believer in looking at what you did outside of work. Were you involved in symphony? Did you play team sports? Do you like to do recreational team sports? Do you understand what it's like to be part of a team rather than simply an individual? And I am always more inclined to be engaged with those individuals who understand from a practical standpoint of being engaged on a day-to-day blood, sweat, and tears point of teamwork, right? Those are people that tend to, in my view, the universe get it. And they get it because they understand we first instead of me first. I get really annoyed with the I, me, my human beings on the planet versus those individuals that go, that's not the best possible solution for all of us.
Yeah, I think honestly, as you're going through there, I loved a lot of that. But what kept on happening is my stoic buzzers were going off. But one of the big things that I think is the point I'll pick out all those different ones is, and I want to say this is Seneca, but I'm not 100% on it. But it's meditate often on the interconnectedness of life. And you're looking at things, and it's you going about and doing what is in your natural capacity. We're not asking people to go out and do more than they can. Do what you can, do what you're able. But when you think about how you're connected with the rest of the world, it's not just you. Everything is so intertwined. We're so interdependent as social creatures. And then not even to get into like freaking economics of it and all this different stuff. We're so intertwined that it's up to you. All you can do in your life is live to your capacity and have that positive effect on others. And that's one of those, there's your feel good moment for the show, Dad. When you do that and you get everyone out there living to their capacity, you help other people. When I wake up early, because I know I can wake up early and I can get started on work, it helps people I work with because they're going to feel that energy. Just like if I dress well, they're going to see me dressing well and they're going to start dressing well and they're going to feel good about themselves. It all just keeps building and building and building, but you have to choose to make that impact on your community.
Truth. And Cam, so here's the deal with that, bro. Clothing and way you dress is literally just our entry point to have these conversations, right? It is the tip of the spear that we are trying to start with. And if individuals start to dress better, then it ends up being the places where we can start to address, how am I treating my community? How am I treating my significant others? How am I treating my kids, right? The whole point about this is not just about getting dressed better. It's about how do I evolve as a human being to become the best human being that I possibly can. And when I say that getting dressed is the tip of that spear, it really is. It is just the beginning spaces so that we can start to have the conversations that naturally proliferate behind that. We want to try and figure out how do we evolve into being the best versions of ourselves. And I think you're absolutely right. A great deal of that is something that so many individuals are afraid to do. We will get caught up in anxiety, right? And in the fear portions of that, rather than trying to get into the love portions of that, of looking at ourselves as complete human beings. And how do I introspectively, when I say most people don't do this, that is an honest look at myself in an introspective sense and figure out how do I apply the best parts of myself into society and into community, and how do I take those other parts that I'm working on and allow those to evolve and get better.
So that's a great segue to what is your process for continuous improvement? What do you do?
Oh man, I like Bruce Lee said, be like water. I want to do my best to surround myself with individuals that I know, love, trust, admire. If I am the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room, right? So if I'm the brightest cat in the room, then I want to be there to share whatever it is that I have to share. But I want to get out of that room and into the next room with individuals who can help bring their energy into the spaces that I need to learn from. So oftentimes that's reading, that's podcasts, that's television shows that move me in those spaces. It is being attuned and akin to the spirit that is inside me and the connection that is inside me to the all. And to be a bit spiritual in that space, I certainly believe that there's an interconnectedness, as Cam was speaking earlier, to all, right? We are all connected together. One of the biggest misnomers that we have is that you are separated from everyone else. And one of the biggest truths that I've come to understand over the course of my life is that I'm connected to all. There's some individuals that I'm connected to in the all that I really wish I wasn't, right? But I am my brother's keeper, and I am a keeper of my society and of my community, right? I am engaged in those spaces, and people will do things that I don't love, and I'm going to do things that people don't love as well. But there's a connection that happens between all of us. So for me to try and continue my growth in that space is to understand my connection to all. It is to constantly reground myself in understanding that that connection exists. And it is allowing myself the spaces to be able to learn those truths that resonate inside my chest. They resonate and they land in my body. And they move my spirit into different places. And that means oftentimes hearing things from unlikely sources and unlikely people, but it's allowing myself to be open to those connections when they come about. That's pretty special. So oftentimes that's books, right? Sometimes it's podcasts. Sometimes it's listening to books on tape. Sometimes it's different speaker series. But I can promise you, if you're listening to one voice, you're only hearing one perspective. You're only getting your spirituality from one speaker at church. You're getting one view on life. And it is not your connection and your conversation to God. You are hearing it filtered through somebody else's voice. Until you're willing to go out and find several different spaces and realize that God is going to talk to you in a lot of different ways, you're missing out. The same thing comes from your education. If you're getting your education from one source, then you're getting it filtered through one lens and you are being manipulated one way or another, whether it's good or bad, but you don't really understand that. It's when you start to take in all the different ways that you are connected to the universe that you can expand your point of view and your thought processes in your education.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dad.
Nope, your turn.
Okay, I was going to say, I think it's interesting because what you're saying there, it's totally true, and I can see how it has affected you in the course of your life. Because when you view things from different angles, when you take in different information, when you're being a sponge like that, and you're just pulling in all this different stuff, what you wind up doing is something really basic that we all work towards, but it's rejecting the false dichotomies of the way that people misperceive the life that we live. And the real simple one that you're addressing with Men's Exchange, and I'm sure there's other examples that we can pull from it, is the false dichotomy of for-profit versus nonprofit. That there's these evil for-profit businesses, and then there's these charities who don't make any money, and that is the way the world works. Well, we know that that's not the way the world actually works. Right. And when you accept that and you start to intertwine those two, you can do great things with it because you take the best of both worlds. But in order to get to that point of rejecting that false dichotomy, you have to be able to take in information from all sorts of different folks.
Truth, man, 100% true. So it's getting rid of the word or and replacing it with the word and, right? It's finding your ands in this world. And that might be the thing that I want everybody to walk away with today is finding your ands, right? Getting rid of your ors and finding your ands. If you believe that God is only in the profound and not in the profane, you're missing half the story. If you believe that God is the creator of all and the connector of all, then God is in the profound and in the profane. And you have to look at all of it to be able to get the full power and spectrum of what's going on in your universe, right? Mm-hmm. You are not a Democrat or a Republican. If you eliminate that crap and you figure out you're a Democrat and a Republican, then you understand that you're an American and you can get rid of all the other bullshit that goes along with that, right? If you recognize that you can get profit and do good things instead of doing get profit or do good things, then we can get rid of the crap that goes along with that and we can start to understand the true spectrum of what can happen. You're 100% Cam. If we get rid of the dichotomy, right, and we start to realize that we can do more things with the word and, yes, and, rather than an or, we can figure out things that we have yet to even scratch the surface on as a race of people. And when I say a race of people, I mean human beings across the globe.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, as one of our favorite things to talk about, multivariate problem solving, right, Dad? And what are you doing? You're not saying this variable or this variable, which one do we want to address? You're saying this variable and this variable and the 50 other that matter because things are complex. But you're
And the
putting it
second
all
and third
together.
order effects of each of those and what happens
Exactly.
after that. Yeah.
And the second effects and the third order effects. You got to look at the entire problem so you can address what's actually going on and when you look at the entire problem, when you say and instead of or, you wind up solving things and having lasting effects and really affecting change because you're solving the true problem. You're not solving one variable of it.
And I'm solving the problem today. The problem today is going to be different than the problem tomorrow. The problem is the variable is going to change when I take 3 more steps in that direction versus 3 steps in that direction, right? It's not, and it isn't an or, it's an and. When I get there, I'm going to figure out that problem also.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. I've been reading through a Frank Knight book. He's an old economist, but he goes through and he talks about all these different things how we talk about perfect competition, the way things go, and how capitalists view the world and how we can move forward from things. And he defines all this stuff with all these great references to other economists. And then he says, but this is all a static state. That is the problem there, is that we think of things in a static state and
Right.
nothing is static. He goes through and says, if you assume these 10 things don't happen, then it can go. And the things are literally time moving forward, increase of capital, like all this different stuff that is always happening, people changing, people moving, all this different stuff. He's like, if you assume none of that happens, then yes, there you go. It works. But the problem is that things happen. Life changes and you have to be able to adjust yourself for that.
You got to pivot.
Great. Well, James, one thing I wanted to get out before, then I would kick myself if I forgot this at any point, was what is your quick style tip? One quick style tip, or 2 if you have them, that we can just blast out and help some men out there with, or ladies.
The very first thing for every human being is iron your clothes, right? I don't care if you see somebody show up in a t-shirt. If the t-shirt is clean and ironed, that's going to be the biggest thing that you can make an impact with. Quite honestly, ironing your clothes is the biggest change that you can make. I mean, it seems incredibly simple to me, but is also a thing that makes a gigantic impact. There are a lot of different style tips that we can go through, but the easiest answer for me is still, when I'm looking in the mirror, is this the best version of myself that I can present today? And what you feel on Tuesday is totally different than what you feel on Thursday, right? One of the things Don Miguel Ruiz talks about in the 4 agreements is giving your best today. And your best today is different than your best yesterday, and it's different than your best tomorrow. And my grandmother used to say, if you've given your best effort, then the angels in heaven couldn't ask more of you. I think that's one of the greatest statements around my universe. It's just giving your best. And if I can give my best in this moment, then that works. So the style tips I would tell you to really come down to that same space are iron your clothes. And then when you're looking in the mirrors, you're walking out of your house, just go, is this the best I have to offer today?
I think that's great. And, but again, this is the great thing, is it swings me back around. I got one of the other Stoic things I was writing down earlier that it just hits me back with was the giving your best today. That reminds me so much of the memento mori, which is remember that you will die. Look back on today and think, if I died tomorrow, or whenever I die, if I look back on today, is this going to be something I'm happy with? And that's just living your best for that day. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but are you going to be happy with how much effort you're going to be in? Are you going to be happy with how you looked? Or are you going to be looking at yourself like a slob in flip-flops and t-shirt that isn't even ironed?
Right. Absolutely. Otis, you got another question for me, buddy?
Yeah. What's next, man? What's next with the men's exchange? What's next steps?
So with the men's exchange, we were planning on trying to offer franchise opportunities this year. The pandemic has slowed that down, and it has slowed it down from a very universal aspect around the globe, but it is actually exactly where we need to be. In as much as I was pushing to push that out, that was also my plan and not the plan of the universe. And the universe had a different plan. And as I'm seeing that different plan beginning to unfold, it means that our next goal is to provide franchise opportunities. And much like we do part business, part nonprofit as a social enterprise, we're trying to figure out the best ways that we can offer franchises in each location to where it becomes, there's some profit that's built around that, and that profit is also built around how do we impact the community. And when we offer franchises, I really want to make it clear I am not interested in owning those franchises. I would like, to be paid for the marketing pieces that go along with that, the consulting fees that go along with that. But I want those to be reasonable and not something that taxes the individual owner to the spaces where they can't touch their communities and that they can't live and survive and thrive in their own communities as well. But in each community, we want a separate individually owned men's exchange because I want somebody who's embedded and invested in that community to be able to address the problems inside that community. So when you are generating funds and what you're going to do with the profitability of those funds to impact your community, it is completely different in Omaha than it is in Tucson, than it is in Colorado Springs, than it is in San Antonio, than it is in Savannah, right? Every single one of those communities has got a different issue. And it might be domestic violence against males in that community. It might be overcoming alcoholism. It might be overcoming addiction. It might be reentering from prison. I don't know what those spaces are, but we want you to be able to speak life into the areas that are challenges in your community. And we want somebody who's invested in that, who can make the very natural and organic connections through the nonprofit agencies, through the for-profit agencies, through the public government, so that they can make the most natural and organic connections that are going to help grow and impact that business in the best possible way. So the next phase is to figure out how we get a chance to do franchise ownership throughout the country and let every community that has one person in it that raises their hand and says, I want this in our community. We want to be able to help them, journey with them, and help them open the spaces so that they can learn from some of the mistakes I've made, that they can accelerate themselves down the road in a faster space. That's what we want to see doing. The second place in that is that we find ourselves, as of yesterday, in a very unique space. Tailored Brands, which owns the Men's Warehouse, Joseph A. Banks, and K&G Men's Store, has decided that they are closing over 500 stores. That is going to have, that's a huge thing. So when you take into account them closing, in Colorado Springs in particular, but closing Joseph A. Banks, closing Men's Warehouses, closing JCPenney's has already filed and closing up shop. Nordstrom's Rack is closing up a lot of Nordstrom stores and Nordstrom's locations in town or throughout the country. Express, I know I'm forgetting 2 or 3, but there's so many of these clothing stores that are closing up and going out of business. That puts us in a very unique position, which points out that there's some challenges in the market, and we are going to do everything we can to meet those challenges and to also be accurately invested in our community in the best possible ways. So it's there are people that I said this to that immediately got scared and got worried and got nervous. My wife asked me, "Are you worried about this?" No, there's some concerns, but I'm pretty excited about it because it means there's an opportunity for us to better touch the lives of the individuals in our community.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's exciting, man. I'm excited for you and excited for what that's going to do, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go, man. Talk about the sea of opportunities. Don't want to go down the blue ocean, red ocean thing, because that's another half hour of talk there. But
I was about to make our joke. We have to do it. This could have been a 3-hour Joe Rogan one, as we make that joke every time they go like this. It's my gosh, we could go all day.
Well, hey James, thanks so much for taking some time. Camden, I'm going to be nice because I'm a good dad. What'd you learn today? Let you go first.
Well, I got 2 I'm going to do because I think they're 2 easy ones, and I wanted to make up for the fact that I was taking the low-hanging fruit on this. But replace or with and. Got to get that out there again because that is such a great quote on that. And then also just iron your clothes. Take the extra time, wake up a little earlier, iron your clothes, even if it's a T-shirt. One of my good friends, Amir, he called me out once for not ironing my shorts. We were going out, just collared shirt and shorts. And he said, dude, you look like crap. Why aren't you ironing your shorts? I'm like, what do you mean? And then I ironed my shorts once, and now it's like, okay, every single time I got to make that change. That's how I want to present myself, right? Dad, I'll send it over to you. What did you learn?
Yeah, well, my favorite one was just iron your shirt, boy. That's how I would have said it. Candace said it in a much more pure way, and I said it much more like a dad and a coach. Iron your shirt, boy. But yeah, it's that attitude and how you dress can really set you up for the attitude, and not just what other people see, the perspective that other people see of you, but the perspective of your own self going out, and how that can affect and cause a lift. The Tony Robbins make your move thing. The make your move could be putting on a sport coat. So
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me on, and I really do appreciate.
I want to
spending
know
some
what
time.
you learned,
Not
though,
off,
James.
not off the hook yet.
Oh.
What you learned today?
That's a little bit unfair because the things that I've learned are really some things that I know about both of you guys. It's not so much learning as it is reinforcement. Otis, there's something that was a kindred spirit that was drawn to you. And if anybody looked at the two of us, just seeing the two of us, they would see two human beings that look like they belong in completely different worlds, right? They would see two different sides of America. But from the first moment I met you, there was a kindred spirit that was there. And one of the things that I most value about you is your no BS style of presenting. You are authentically you at all times, and you share that out in the universe. And as that bleeds over into your kids, Cam, that is something that exists with you, that you have also built upon and created your own personality that comes out of that, right? There's a foundation of Otis that's there, but you are absolutely not Otis. You are a 2.0 version of that, right? You are a grown and evolved individual that comes out of that base space. So one of the things that I've learned, and it's less than a learning, it's a lot more of a reinforcement, is how much I greatly appreciate the two of you and your learned desire to get better and diving deeper into the true classics of Stoicism, and finding those quotes and listening and learning in those spots. That's always been one of those great places for me. And that's one of the things I most greatly appreciate about both of you.
Well, thanks. Where's give us a shout out where the store's at, some hours, what we can do to help out.
We are at 409 North Tejon, right in the heart of downtown Colorado Springs. So 409 North Tejon. We are open Tuesday through Friday from 11 a.m. till 5 p.m. and Saturdays from 11 till 4. We are closed on Sundays and Mondays. And our kind of tagline is shop, donate, impact, repeat. Anybody in the world can shop with us and spend less than $40. Donate any of the clothing any of the business and men's dress clothing that you don't feel, you don't like, it doesn't fit you anymore, you think the style's out of date, whatever it is, bring it to it, donate it with us. It allows us to have an impact inside of our community. That means that you get to have an impact by shopping with us, by donating with us. You have an impact inside this community. And then we get to repeat that process over and over and over and over again. We have some of the best success stories on the planet, and I'm thrilled to death to share those with anybody that wants to know. But it's because of you and the dichotomy and not the dichotomy, the duality of us being in business together allows us to impact our community in a greater space.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you taking some time out and sharing some awesome wisdom and a couple of stories from your past. One of the few Colorado Springs natives that actually live in Colorado Springs. Very rare to find those. And yeah, great having you on, man. I appreciate it. Camden, run us out, man.
Great. So thank y'all again for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, James Proby, for joining us today, and our sponsors, MASH, Military and Athletic Strength Hemp Oil, and Verby Virtual Fundraising. You can check out recent episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotishow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.